introductions. I don't even need to say anything. One more time, ladies and gentlemen. One more time. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Or technically, there. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Richard. Good morning, people. How are you? It turned out, what we generally do is you ask the questions and we answer them to the best of our ability. All right. Seems to kind of work out all right for any show, any subject that we can help you with. Look at this man. Isn't he classy? For as long as I've known him, that's a long time. I call him old money.
We met at Universal. I remember the day. And when we got together and talked a little bit, I found out one morning that I was to come in for a $6 million man. So I followed who they had before that didn't work. And then the first day I was shooting, I learned something for this guy. I came early. He came earlier. He always used to come. He'd come before, you know, the cameraman was there or anything. And I understood it. I understood it because then, if you have a scene to play, you want to work it out. You want to work out the stage and what, you know, what it is, and he'd go and do that too. And also he'd step up and have some coffee before anybody else.
Priorities.
Well, I learned that from a young lady at the time who was about 60 when I started the Big Valley. And was a wonderful teacher. And Richard knows, he worked with her many times. He did a lot of our Big Valley shows. And, but anyway, from her I learned to be on time, and which to be to her was to be early. Be on time, know your lines, get your marks, and keep your mouth shut. You'll go a long way. And here we are.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, the thing about it all is to realize you're telling a story, and you can do it in many ways. I meet all the great actors, Spencer Tracy, and I asked him one day when he was sitting outside, acting. Don't know too much about it, but don't ever get caught doing it.
We have some questions from anybody. Go ahead. We don't have a mic out there. They generally have one. So.
I probably don't need one.
Okay.
Nobody even knows that.
Watch out for her.
My question is for you from Big Valley. Okay. The very first episode of Big Valley, On the Glory, that I watched a million times with my grandfather, because he loved the Big Valley. You were so proficient on that horse. Did you grow up riding horses?
No, I didn't. Even though I'm from Kentucky, where the racehorses are from, I did maybe some pleasure horse riding, you know, like you would normally do. But once I knew I was going to do the show, I got with some real professional cowboys, and a couple of them were two brothers, and they were world champion trick ropers, and they would perform in Madison Square Gardens when they were young, and so they were very good, and they taught me to calf rope and do all the horse mounts and everything. But you know, being that young and starting out, it's very exciting. And of course, now at the age that you get to now is you kind of wish that you'd used your stuntman a lot more. Because you know, at those ages you feel you're invincible, and it was fun, and it made the day go faster.
Well, I'll tell you, Indian Valley is what it was called, north of the studio. And I came in one day, and they do these things sort of for very special things. And there was this great big tall thing going on. And I came closer, and there was a platform, you know, holding it up. And then I see that there's a big thing going on. And when I looked up, I said, "What's going on here?" And then they say, "Look up, really look up." And when I looked up, it was him. And then he works his way down. He says, "Hello, Dick." I said, "What are you doing? You're trying to put us out of business or something like that?" No, he said, and with that, he went straight up again. It was one of these things, you know? And then he slowly came down, and then we found someone else that could take us on a ship, an airplane, and he said, "Let's go." And I wanted to drop off some flowers for. Which one was it?
It's not funny.
Farrah, you know that name?
Yeah. Was she as lovely as she seemed?
She was, yes. My wife now, who we've been married almost 20 years, she's blonde, and her first initial is F. There's something coincidental in there. They're both wonderful people.
Yeah.
Her name is Faith, and I keep the faith.
We have a question back there, and then we'll get over here.
Yeah.
Back there. You said.
Yes, sir. During the 5th season of $6 Million Man, you guys filmed Deadly Countdown, which was filmed here in Florida. Would you mind talking about that? And NASA gave you a lot of access to the facilities over at KSC and stuff like that.
I remember, was it here?
Yeah, there was some stuff that was actually filmed underneath the launch pad down at what they call the bumper room and things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I remember going in, but I think we did, the only one I can remember real vividly is the one we did in Cape Canaveral.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And yeah, I got to put on one of the actual space outfits that belonged to one of the astronauts. I can't remember his name, but he happened to be one of the bigger ones because they're all very small people. And, so I got in the suit. The actual people that put him in the suit to go up put me in the suit, and it was like really going through what these guys go through in reality. And when they close the helmet and you latch it in, and you're on a respirator which you hand carry back then, and they put me in the van, the same van that they would take them out to the launch pad, went up the elevator into the very top of the capsule, and you get in those things, and then you're upside down looking up, and in this particular episode there was an emergency that we had to get out. It was a fire or something. So there was 3 ways to get out of there. One is the elevator, which is very slow. The elevator was very slow. The next one was a long cable line with a car attached to it, a bucket kind of thing that you jumped into and it slid out miles away. The fastest one, there's a hole in the wall. You went in feet first, and it slid down. It was really slick and fast. And you come out into what they call the rubber room, bumper room. And it was maybe from this table to that wall when you come out. And you go down so fast that they had astronauts who, of course, you could hold your knees out and slow your speed down. But the astronauts wouldn't have time to do that. They wouldn't. So they had them coming. They would be hitting the wall on the far side. They had several broken legs, they told me. That's how fast they come down out of that thing. And I enjoyed it, and I went back up, and I was able to, place my knees out so I could control my speed. So the second time I took a camera down with me, and it was used in the show.
Oh,
Yeah, it was very, very exciting. They were very cooperative, and unfortunately, we've cut back on NASA now, and so we don't know what's happening.
Too sad.
Another question, Jose?
Yeah, I know you have the episode for the $6 man. You fight against the Bigfoot.
Bigfoot?
Bigfoot.
Yeah, I can tell you a quick one about Bigfoot. He's a well-known wrestler named Andre the Giant.
Everybody loved him. Everybody just loved the guy.
And he was about 7'4" and 400 pounds. And when you put him in that suit, he was very big. And
Oh, I
we
didn't
were having this fight, and it was very hot and humid day, and we in the woods, and he picked me up and throw me, which he did about 20 feet. And then he was to come and take a flying leap and land on top of me. And I was lying there, squinting, looking up into the sun, and I see this big cloud come over. I know it's him, but I think I'm going to get smushed. He didn't even touch me. I mean, I never felt him. That's how great these wrestlers are. And, but he was a wonderful man. He loved to cook. He had a French restaurant over in France. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy.
Oh, wow.
Dang, that's cool.
That's
Andre
just
the Giant.
How would you feel about them making a movie version of Bionic Man? Who would you like to see play your role?
I've never really thought about it. It's been kicked around, as Richard knows, to so many different studios. I think maybe the Weinstein brothers might have the rights to it at this time. But the problem for a long time was with the actual owners of the copyright, which would have been the man who wrote it, Martin Caden's family. Richard would tell you more about those. I don't know that.
Yes, well, after it was over, a couple of years afterward, I said I want to do a 2-hour movie. And I went around a long time to get anything done. And finally, I got it done. And Lee and I were interested. I was interested in talk to her about it. We haven't been in England. The Queen had invited us for blind children of Britain and so forth. So there was he and I and Dennis. He was with us too. And we thought, well, we'd go to France and go on those little canal rides. And in the afternoon, the ladies went on to buy something, and he quickly took off. So I had a bicycle. I got around him, and I said, I got something to tell you, Steve. We're going to make a 2-hour movie. He said, no chance. I've had enough of all this. And I said, well, you ought to remember this because it's going to happen, and it did, and we did 3 of them. 3 of them.
Well, did you tell him the one that we did in '89, I think, in Toronto, where we hired this little girl? And we didn't make much doing this 2-hour movie, but it was Sandra Bullock. She never put us in one of her movies after that.
That happens.
Got a question back there?
Yes, Mr. Anderson, you were in Forbidden Planet, which is probably the precursor to all the sci-fi movies that we've watched since then. If you have an anecdote about appearing in that. And my second part of the question was, in the first $6 Million Man movie, Darren McGavin played your character. Did you and Lee have any get-together to decide how Steve and Oscar would interact after you took over the CIA operative Oscar Goldman character from Darren McGavin?
You know, let me quickly say, because Darren McGavin was a very good actor, and but I think he came from New York and did a lot of stage and stuff. And to me, he did a good job, but he was a little too rough and we needed some class in there. That I could feel that he wasn't just sending me on a mission. I was his friend also. So that helps for the character relationship.
Thank you. Anything about Forbidden Planet?
Forbidden
Like
Planet.
we talked about?
That's amazing, that show. It was on MGM. Someone had picked it up by a person, I think, who was Australian. And the studio didn't want to do it. They were old guys now, and they didn't understand what it was all about. However, they finally said, all right, well, you can do it. And they gave them the second. In Metro, they had two ways of making pictures. Those that were the best cinematographers and those that were not. So they got the least cameraman, the least money, and so forth and so on. And then I happened to have been asked to play in it too. So they had about 3 days of shooting. It was all on one stage, the whole picture, stage 24. And it was quite an interesting thing doing that. Then the producer came down, and as he started to talk, someone said, the upstairs wants you. That's the producers. So we all said, uh-oh, here it comes. And so he went up there, and as he walked in, he told us this. He said, we like you, we're going to spend more money. Did they? Walter Pigeon, by the way, the actor, he was absolutely wonderful in it. And there were a lot of things to think of because it all had to do with robots and everything starting and so forth. And it really changed every film that we ever made afterwards. All these, I forget his name, but Shapiro, and not Shapiro, but these young guys that were at USC, and they were studying it. They saw this movie and changed the whole thing. Lucas, for example, and they all got that new change. You talk about how generations changed, but how this changed, it changed everything, and has since been awarded in many ways and copied in many ways. But there's nothing like what happened there, and it had such a wonderful story and a wonderful idea about what goes on up there.
We got time for one more question. One more question. Did the gentleman have his hand up?
First off, Mr. Majors, I want to thank you for signing my box to me and my little girls.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And as I've been watching the set, I realized that, I'm not getting the order exactly right, but I think it was the 4th season, you had a string of very memorable and also, I would think, challenging episodes, almost back to back. You had the return of Bigfoot, two-parter, you had the Bionic toy, you had the Thunderbird, those were both 2-hour movies, or long episodes, and then you had the 3-part Kill Oscar crossover, almost back to back. And I was wondering if you recall that time period, and was that as challenging and busier than usual for you as we might expect?
Well, it seemed like most of the series I've done have been action-packed. And I don't ever want to do another show with the Fall Guys. You're in every shot, as Richard can tell you. She's in his nice little office, you know. But that's when we finally finished, and he said, you want to do a TV movie, a 2-hour movie? I said, no. But he talked me into 3 more. Then after that, I was trying to get rid of the Steve Austin characterization, you know, to be labeled with that forever, which is why we're here, I guess. was asked to do the Fall Guy, which I thought that would be great because if it's any success at all, they'll forget 6 mil and it'll help. So 5 years of that, and they even wanted to go and do more, but I worn my body out after 5 years and said I kind of have to take a break. But it's still 6 mil is the show.
Amazing. Just amazing. There's just one final thing I'd like to say. The Vietnam War had just ended. Everybody was poor. Everybody hated the whole thing. And this was a time when this movie came along. And when it came along, they had us on Friday night. And then just a simple comedian knocked us off after the third show. So the studio, I don't know whether you had anything to do with it, but they put us on Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Now, how about that? I got a phone call on the second week saying, Rich, it's terrific, we're number one. And we were for all that time. And when they started seeing this, watching what he was doing, they all said, we're watching at 8 o'clock on Sunday night, the whole country. And they all said, we have something that we didn't have before. We've got a hero.
We're really grateful that we've brought attention to Bionics because, as you know, as you can tell from today, how far they've advanced in their technology and helping our wounded warriors and all the people who need prosthetics and stuff. They're just really getting phenomenal, and it's still a long way to go. It's going to be something. We're just proud to have been able to help that along.
Mr. Lee Majors.